Is there a case to be made that Brothers Karamazov is the greatest book ever written?
Yeah, there's a case to be made for that. I don't know. Is it better than Crime and Punishment?
Yes, yeah.
You think so? Why do you? I'm not arguing with it. Why do you think that?
Today we are covering the Brothers Karamazov. Hope you enjoy. The Brothers Karamazov is a novel by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, one of the greatest writers in the history of Russian literature. The novel is considered a masterpiece and is one of the most widely read and highly regarded works of fiction in the world. It was published in 1880 and is the final novel Dostoyevsky wrote before his death.
The Brothers Karamazov is set in 19th century Russia and tells the story of three brothers, Dmitri, Ivan, and Alexei, who are all struggling with their own personal demons and conflicts. The novel explores themes of faith, morality, and the nature of good and evil, and it delves into the psychological and emotional lives of its characters in great depth. The novel is known for its complex and nuanced characters, its philosophical and spiritual themes, and its vivid depiction of Russian life and culture. The Brothers Karamazov is divided into 12 books, which are further divided into a total of 80 chapters. The 12 books are 1. Book 1, The History of a Family. 2. Book 2, A Prodigal Son. 3. Book 3, An Unfortunate Gathering. 4. Book 4, A Flaw in the Titles. 5. Book 5, The First Reckoning. 6. Book 6, A Hunger Artist. 7. Book 7, Rebellion. 8. Book 8, The Grand Inquisitor. 9. Book 9, Lacerations. 10. Book 10, The Boy at Christ's Christmas Tree. 11. Book 11, The Veil Torn in Two. 12. Book 12, The Great Renunciation. Each book explores a different aspect of the story and the characters, and the chapters within each book are further divided into smaller sections that focus on specific events or conversations. The novel is known for its complex structure and its rich and detailed depiction of the lives and inner thoughts of its characters. In the first book, The History of a Family, we are introduced to the main characters of the novel, the three Karamazov brothers and their father, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov. The novel begins with a description of Fyodor Pavlovich, a wealthy but dissipated and irresponsible man who is known for his promiscuity and his fondness for drinks. Despite his many faults, Fyodor Pavlovich is also a complex and charismatic individual, and he is deeply loved by his children. We are also introduced to the three Karamazov brothers in this first part of the novel. Dmitri is the oldest of the three brothers and is known for his passionate nature and his impulsive behavior. Ivan is the middle brother and is a serious and intellectual young man who is deeply concerned with questions of morality and faith. Alexei is the youngest of the three brothers and is known for his gentle and kind nature. The first part of the novel focuses on the relationships between the Karamazov brothers and their father, as well as the conflicts and tensions that exist within the family. We learn that Dmitri has a difficult relationship with his father, who he feels has wronged him in the past, while Ivan and Alexei have a more distant but respectful relationship with Fyodor Pavlovich. The novel also introduces several other characters who will play important roles later in the story, including Grigory, the Karamazov servant, and Smerdyakov, the illegitimate son of Fyodor Pavlovich. The Brothers Karamazov serves to introduce the main characters and themes of the novel, and to establish the complex and troubled relationships within the Karamazov family. Dmitri's relationship with his father remains strained, and he becomes increasingly resentful of Fyodor Pavlovich's treatment of him. Ivan, meanwhile, becomes increasingly concerned with moral and philosophical questions, and he begins to question his own beliefs and values. The first part of the novel also introduces a number of new characters and plot lines. We learn more about Grigory, the Karamazov servant, and about his relationship with Fyodor Pavlovich and with the Karamazov brothers. We also meet Katerina Ivanovna, a young woman who is deeply in love with Dmitri, and who becomes an important figure in the novel. We also see the beginning of a major plotline involving Fyodor Pavlovich's wealth and his plans for distributing it among his children. This becomes a source of tension and conflict within the family, and it sets the stage for the events that will unfold later in the novel. Overall, the first part of the Brothers Karamazov continues to explore the complex and troubled relationships within the Karamazov family, and it introduces several new characters and plot lines that will play important roles in the story. The second part of the novel, A Prodigal Son, begins with the arrival of Father Zosima, a revered and respected monk who is known for his wisdom and spiritual guidance. Father Zosima becomes an important figure in the lives of the Karamazov brothers, and he helps to bring a sense of order and purpose to their troubled lives. As the second part of the novel unfolds, we see the relationships between the Karamazov brothers continue to evolve and change. Dmitri becomes increasingly obsessed with Katerina Ivanovna, and he begins to feel that he is being wronged by his father and by the world at large. Ivan becomes more and more isolated and troubled as he struggles with his own personal demons and with the moral and philosophical questions that have begun to haunt him. Alexei, meanwhile, remains a calming presence in the midst of the family's turmoil, and he continues to try to bring a sense of peace and understanding to the relationships between his brothers and his father. The novel also introduces several new characters and plot lines. We meet Lise, a young woman who becomes a close friend of Ivan, and we learn more about Smerdyakov, the illegitimate son of Fyodor Pavlovich, who begins to play a more prominent role in the story. The second part of the Brothers Karamazov continues to explore the complex and troubled relationships within the Karamazov family, and it introduces several new characters and plot lines that will play important roles in the story. It also sees the arrival of Father Zosima, who becomes an important figure in the lives of the Karamazov brothers and helps to bring a sense of order and purpose to their troubled lives. The third part of the Brothers Karamazov is titled An Unfortunate Gathering, and the character of Ivan is the main focus of this part. He becomes increasingly isolated and troubled as he grapples with moral and philosophical questions. He is deeply troubled by the suffering and injustice he sees in the world, and he begins to doubt the existence of God and the meaning of life. These doubts and uncertainties lead him to question his own beliefs and values, and he becomes increasingly isolated from his family and from society as a whole. The third part of the novel also introduces new characters who will play important roles in the story. Pyotr Alexandrovich Myasov is a distant relative of the Karamazovs who becomes involved in the family's conflicts, and Smerdyakov is the illegitimate son of Fyodor Pavlovich who begins to play a more prominent role in the story. Overall, the third part of the Brothers Karamazov explores the character of Ivan and his struggles with faith and morality, and it examines the ways in which his beliefs and values shape his relationships and his actions. The novel delves deeper into the themes of faith and morality, and it looks at the ways in which the characters' beliefs and values influence their relationships and their actions. The third part also introduces several new characters and plot lines that will play important roles in the story. Part 4, A Flaw in the Titles, is a part of the Brothers Karamazov that focuses on the legal dispute over the inheritance of Fyodor Karamazov's property and the moral dilemma that arises from it. In this part, Fyodor Karamazov's three sons, Dmitri, Ivan, and Alexei, are informed that their father has died and that there is a dispute over his property. Dmitri, the eldest son, claims that he is entitled to the bulk of the inheritance because of a promise Fyodor made to him, while Ivan and Alexei claim that their father had no right to make such a promise. Dmitri, Ivan, and Alexei are each convinced that the inheritance is rightfully theirs. As the dispute over the inheritance proceeds, Ivan begins to question the morality of the whole situation. He argues that the desire for wealth and property is a flaw in human nature, and that people are willing to harm each other for the sake of material gain. He also expresses his own dislike for his father, who was not an ideal person and often acted in selfish and cruel ways. This part also continued to develop characters of Ivan and Alexei further and their relationship. Ivan's philosophical musings and Alexei's piety are prominent in the part, and their ideologies clash. Ivan is deeply troubled by the idea of God. He often expresses his disbeliefs. On the other hand, Alexei is a deeply religious man who is determined to live a good and pious life, but he is also troubled by the idea that people are capable of doing great evil in the name of God. Overall, the fourth part, a flaw in the title, serves to deepen the moral and existential questions that are central to the novel and develops the characters of Dmitri, Ivan, and Alexei further. In the fifth part of the novel, The First Reckoning, we see the character Dmitri becomes convinced that his father is trying to wrong him and prevent him from marrying Katerina Ivanovna, and he becomes increasingly angry and resentful. The fifth part also explores the relationships between the Karamazov brothers, and we see the ways in which their different personalities and beliefs shape their interactions with each other. Ivan and Dmitri have a strained relationship, as they have very different beliefs and values, while Alexei tries to bring a sense of peace and understanding to the relationships between his brothers and his father. The fifth part also introduces several new characters and plot lines. We meet Agrafena Alexandrovna Svetlovodskaya, a woman who becomes involved in Dmitri's life, and we see the role of the church and religion continue to be a central theme in the novel. The character of Father Zosima, a revered and respected monk, becomes increasingly important as a spiritual guide and mentor to the Karamazov brothers. Overall, the fifth part of the Brothers Karamazov focuses on the relationships between the Karamazov brothers and their father, and it explores the ways in which their different personalities and beliefs shape their interactions with each other. The novel continues to delve into the themes of faith and morality, and it introduces several new characters and plot lines that will play important roles in the story. Book 6, A Hunger Artist, is the sixth part of the Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. In this part, the novel introduces the character of the hunger artist, who is a performer who voluntarily starves himself for the entertainment of others. He is an example of the theme of art and the nature of artistic expression that runs throughout the novel. The hunger artist, who is not named but often referred to simply as the hunger artist or the artist, is a man who has chosen to perform the extreme and painful art of fasting for the enjoyment of others. He is described as being the best in the business, who fasts for longer than any of his competitors and receives great acclaim from the public. As the hunger artist's career progresses, he finds that he is increasingly unable to find fulfillment in his performances. He becomes disillusioned with the audience who watch him, and he comes to the realization that he is performing for the sake of others, not for himself. Eventually, he decides to retire, and the circus owner, who is desperate to hold on to the artist's fame, decides to keep him locked in his cage and force him to continue the act. In the end, the hunger artist dies in his cage, but his death goes unnoticed and people move on. This story is also seen as a metaphor for the emptiness of modern life and art. The public wants sensation and spectacle, but they do not care about the humanity of the performers, nor do they understand the cost of such performance. The hunger artist's tragedy is that he could not find a way to express himself authentically, and the audience only care about him for their amusement and not for him as an individual. This chapter also reflects on the idea of authenticity and the human need to be recognized and understood. The hunger artist's death represents the failure of art to provide true meaning and fulfillment in life, and the public's failure to understand or appreciate genuine expression. The Hunger Artist's story is a commentary on the superficiality of the world and the desire for fame and recognition that consumes people.
Unfortunately, we are running out of video time and we have to divide the video into 2 parts. Make sure you don't miss the second part by clicking the bell below.